With A King in New York, Charles Chaplin was the first filmmaker who dared to expose, through satire and ridicule, the paranoia and political intolerance which overtook the United States in the Cold War years of the 1940s and 1950s. He himself had had bitter personal experience of the American malaise of this time. The right wing and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, had seen him as an ideal target, a foreigner who had never taken American citizenship and whose work had a natural appeal to the humanists and radical intellectuals who were now regarded as enemies of society. By the late 1940s, the political and personal attacks on Chaplin became so acute that in 1952 he was happy to be forced into a decision to leave America forever and make his home in Europe. To take up filmmaking again in Britain as an exile was a challenging undertaking. He was now nearing 70. For almost 40 years he had enjoyed the luxury of his own studio and a staff of regular employees who understood his way of work. Now, though, he had to work with strangers in costly and unfriendly rented studios. In the old days he could take all the time he wanted, trying things over and over again until he got them to his satisfaction. Now every minute cost money. Under such pressure, Chaplin completed shooting A King in New York in what was for him a record time of only 12 weeks, but the film shows the strain. The story is set in New York, but Chaplin was obliged to use London locations, which are often less than convincing. He employed one of the cinema's great cameramen, Georges Perrinal, but was generally in too much of a hurry to allow Perrinal enough time to light the set properly, so that the photography often has a shabby look. The script, too, would have benefited from a good editor. In his satirical view of America, Chaplin takes on too many targets: widescreen movies, television commercials, cosmetic surgery, social pretensions, and a lot more. Chaplin himself insisted that he did not want to make a political film. His intention was still, as it had always been, he said, just to make people laugh. Yet at the centre of this imperfect film is a fierce and effective comic essay on political intolerance and its ultimate victims. Chaplin plays the main role of King Shardov, who flees to New York after a revolution in his Middle European kingdom, intent on a campaign for the peaceful use of nuclear energy. Unfortunately, his crooked prime minister makes off with the royal treasury, forcing the king to earn money by such demeaning stratagems as acting in television commercials. Visiting a progressive school, the king makes the acquaintance of Rupert, a small boy whose parents are left-wing activists. Later, he meets Rupert again when the boy runs away from school to avoid interrogation by the Un-American Activities Committee. The FBI pursue the boy, and the king finds himself before the committee. His appearance is a fiasco. He gets caught up in a fire hose and soaks the committee. Later, he meets Rupert again. The once spirited child is now cowed and ashamed. He has been tricked by the FBI into naming names, into acting as an informer against his parents' friends. It is interesting to compare A King in New York with an earlier film, The Kid, in which a small boy is also a central figure, as the ultimate victim of a sick society. In The Kid, the injustice of society takes the form of physical deprivation. In A King in New York, the child suffers something far worse. His honour, his conscience, and his soul are abused. The role of the small boy was of crucial importance. Like Jackie Coogan in The Kid, he is virtually Chaplin's co-star. It was a last-minute decision to choose his own eldest son, Michael, then 10 years old. Michael's parents thought of disguising his identity under the pseudonym of John Bolton, but the boy himself insisted on keeping his own name, Michael Chaplin. His performance is excellent. He plays Rupert as an odious, precocious brat, but at the same time makes him touching in his vulnerability. In later years, Chaplin and his wife would debate who was the better actor, Michael or Jackie Coogan, with Una Chaplin always championing her own son. Apart from all else, it was commercially audacious of Chaplin to make a film which he knew could not be shown in the United States, and indeed it was to be 16 years before A King in New York was screened there. In Europe, reaction to the film was generally favourable. Critics were not put off by the technical shortcomings, and indeed the distinguished critic Kenneth Tynan considered it a positive merit that nobody has objected the script, to a polishing job, which is the film industry's euphemism for the process whereby rough edges are planed away and sharp teeth blunted. A crude, free film is preferable any day to a smoothly fettered one. In A King in New York, Chaplin, unlike his contemporaries in Hollywood, was definitely and fearlessly unfettered.